All right, guys, in today's video, we're going to be having a discussion about the recent talk regarding the PlayStation 5 APU shot, where people have been dissecting it and discovering that it actually doesn't feature some of the things that some insiders claimed it would, things that I speculated it may include. And I want to make it clear that I'm not trying to have this video come off as some type of damage control Sony Defense Force video. It's not really about that. What this video is meant to be is to kind of cut through all of the excess noise and just acknowledge the important points here and not lose sight of what's actually important and what matters most, what has always mattered most. And so if you look at the way I titled this video, if you look at the way I titled the thumbnail, I said that I fell for Microsoft's and Xbox's power narrative. I fell for their marketing, which is true. And this is why I've had to take multiple L's. It's just a conversation that I've been part of. I'm not trying to pretend that I wasn't. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I didn't talk about the idea of the PlayStation 5 potentially featuring RDNA 3, and I've always been sure to explain what that means. RDNA 3 is not yet a thing. AMD is still in the process of developing it. What it has always meant is essentially that Sony made customizations, they made tweaks to the PlayStation 5's APU that at some point in the future, AMD may find them more useful than they originally thought they would. They decide to take what Sony did, implement it into future AMD products, and before you know it, we could end up seeing the PlayStation 5 having RDNA 3 features, even if it's just one small little thing. That was the way it was always explained. I've been hearing the rumors of RDNA 3 technology and all of this stuff being inside the PlayStation 5, and when it comes to that, the truth is you can't really call the PlayStation 5 RDNA 1, RDNA 1.5, RDNA 2, or 3 because it's so highly customized and Mark Cerny worked so closely with AMD that you just can't classify it as one or the other. It has a lot of unique features that may or may not be implemented into future, iterations of RDNA or whatever.
Now, is it true? Is it true that the PS5 has RDNA 3 features in it? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say, yes, factually, that is 100% confirmed. No, we need to hear it from Sony. We need to hear it from AMD. So I don't know. They're custom. They're custom consoles, guys. And if AMD likes something that Sony did in collaboration with them, with their customizations that they feel as though can benefit the PC market, then they're going to implement it into their cards, into their tech that's going to be released for the PC.
And I think it just became easy for people to run with it and be like, oh, they're saying the PS5 features RDNA 3 when it's not even a thing. But even worse than that, we are at a point right now where this conversation has, in my opinion, completely went off the rails, and people are completely losing sight of reality. And I'm going to do my best in this video to kind of get back to the reality of the situation here and kind of, plant our feet firmly on the ground so that way we are not living in some delusional state of mind when it comes to these consoles and what's currently going on. So as I said, I've had to take the L because I talked about the potential of the PlayStation 5 secret sauce. I listened to these insiders. I listened to the whole discussion about Infinity Cache and how the PS5 potentially has this, but Sony just hasn't talked about it yet, and we're going to find out about it later. Again, I'm not denying any of that. What I was always sure to make clear is that at the end of the day, even though we talk about these things, even though we entertain these rumors and these leaks, I always made it clear that this is not the be-all, end-all, and it should absolutely not determine your personal excitement for whatever it is you're excited for. In fact, there was a podcast that I did on November 1st where I made some things very clear. I tried to make things as clear as I could, considering these consoles were about to launch. Some points I made were, I'm not claiming the PS5 is RDNA 3. I specifically said we do not know if the PS5 has any type of RDNA 3 features in it. We will have to wait for official confirmation from Sony or AMD themselves. And that's exactly what I said. I was also sure to let anybody know that if you are excited for the Xbox Series X, Go buy one. You owe it to yourself to buy one and enjoy it. There's no reason for you not to be excited if that's what you're excited for and if that is your preference. These are all things that I made abundantly clear. I also made it clear that when we started to see the first comparison videos come out that from Digital Foundry when it comes to third-party games, that I expected the Xbox Series X to more often than not have some type of advantage. In most cases, I expected it to be a small advantage, and in some cases, occasionally we could see a more significant advantage. These are all things that I laid out on the table very clearly that people will not talk about. They either forget or they don't care enough to listen in, but they are things that I said and made clear. And so at this point, I'm not saying these things, again, to make it sound like I have nothing to apologize for, I'm not at all at fault. No, there were definitely things that I got way too excited about, and I played into this narrative, is the point I'm trying to get at. I am not innocent. I played into the power narrative, as many of you did, and many others did who maybe will deny it and act like they're not, but we know that they did, and that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But where things get very convoluted and very messy is it's, in my opinion, totally fine to partake in these little battles of, teraflops and RDNA features and who has the better looking games and all that stuff. I'm all about the competition, and I have no problem kind of, taking shots back and forth where it's like, I got to take my L's sometimes. Other people have to take their L's. It is what it is. It's in the name of fun at the end of the day, and also maybe a little bit of entertainment value. But where the real problem lies is when people start to take it too far and they start to completely lose sight of the actual reality of the situation, which is at this point where I'm going to explain to you what the reality of the situation actually is. The reality of the situation is that even though I and maybe some others have to take an L, maybe a couple of L's based off of what we've said, the way we propped things up, the way we talked about these things, PlayStation 5 owners absolutely, objectively do not have to take an L because the PlayStation 5 is doing everything it's supposed to be doing, and in some cases, a little bit more than that, right? I think what people tend to forget here is, what are we actually talking about? We're talking about two consoles, two pieces of hardware that were developed to play video games, right? And these are consoles that are supposed to be looked at as next gen. Now, you could argue that these consoles are not as next-gen as they should be in some cases. I would argue that the PS5 is the more next-gen console due to certain innovations that Sony has attempted. Now, whether or not you agree with those innovations actually landing, actually being significant, well, that is where it becomes subjective. If you want my opinion, I think what Sony has done with the games, visually speaking, certainly looks like a next-gen leap. They've been delivering games, which is a very important point, possibly the most important point that we cannot forget, regardless of whether or not the PS5 is RDNA 1.1, RDNA 1.5, RDNA 2.0, or RDNA 3.0. It does not matter. We need to understand who is delivering the games currently, okay? They look great. They perform great. They brought some innovation to the table with the DualSense. They're trying to do some things with 3D audio. You could even argue that they innovated with the look of the PlayStation 5. Whether you love it or hate it, it's certainly an interesting looking piece of hardware, something that is certainly unique and will be remembered throughout time for how different it looks and how much it stands out. And when you look at Xbox, again, this is not me trying to take shots at Xbox, because I want to reiterate once again that if you enjoy Xbox and if everything I list about Xbox is actually something you prefer, there's no shame in that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it's just the hard facts here that we're talking about. The Xbox Series X is a 12 teraflop full RDNA 2 console, and that is what Microsoft, more than anything, chose to focus on when it comes to their marketing, which is why it's the first thing that I come to when I talk about it. Whereas when I talk about the PS5, the first thing I go to are the games and how awesome they are, right? There's a very different, I guess you could say, surface level visual appeal when it comes to the marketing of these consoles. And we also have to acknowledge the fact that Microsoft has yet to really deliver any big games. Microsoft did not have a launch lineup for the Xbox Series X. You could maybe list one or two smaller games here. I'm not going to count them because absolutely no one went out of their way to buy a Series X for whatever those games are that you're going to list, compared to what Sony did with Demon's Souls Remake, which you could argue is still the best looking game we've gotten so far out of both Sony and Microsoft. Microsoft was supposed to have Halo, then it somehow ended up getting delayed by a year, which I think is good, but still, there was no launch lineup. Sony didn't do this. They had Demon's Souls, as I said, Spider-Man, Sackboy, and others that probably are not as significant, but still, we cannot discount this. Sony has multiple games that are coming up relatively soon that you could argue are bigger games, such as Returnal, Deathloop, and Ratchet and Clank, and they all look great. Okay, some of them are true PS5 exclusives, which is also worth noting. So they're giving you more of a reason to actually, justify owning their new hardware. Microsoft brought no innovation to their controller. They brought no innovation really in any area. The Xbox Series X is essentially more of the same. And if you're getting offended by me saying that, you shouldn't be, because if that's what you prefer, that's perfectly fine. If things such as having full RDNA 2 excites you, and that's what matters most to you, then I guess you did make the right call by buying the Series X. But what's strange to me is that I'm being told by certain individuals that, well, you were wrong about this and you were wrong about that. You got to take your L. And I'm like, okay, I'll take my L. But then they go on to say, and this is why the Xbox is so much better. This is why you should care more about Xbox, because they have this, and that coming in the future, not just in the form of games. But when I ask, well, okay, I was wrong about the whole Infinity Cache thing and believing that, and, I got involved in these power conversations, but at the end of the day, where we are right now, how much does that really matter? What does it really mean? And it turns out it doesn't actually mean anything. Okay, it turns out that we are in a situation where these consoles are very, very similar. They're doing very similar things for games, and what I'm being told right now is that the tools are getting ready, I guess. Behind the scenes, developers are getting more familiar with it, and once they do, in the future, we're going to see some pretty significant performance or visual gaps between third-party multi-plat games on the PS5 and the Series X. And to that I say, okay, but is that what we're seeing right now? And the answer to that, factually, is no. Objectively, the answer is no. Now, does that mean there are no differences? No, there are some, but they're not significant. That's just the reality of the situation. I guess what I'm trying to get at here, guys, is people will very quickly lose sight of what is important and what is not. Obviously, what you would consider important is always subjective at the end of the day. But when you are expressing what is personally important to you, right, you cannot actively ignore the facts. So you want me, Xbox fans, they want me to stop saying that the PS5 is more powerful than the Series X. I don't recall ever saying that, but okay. The Xbox Series X is the more powerful console. Are you happy? The Xbox Series X is the only console that features full RDNA 2. Are you happy? It has 12 T-flops of compute power. Are you happy? Does that help you? I hope it does, because frankly, those things I just listed, at the end of the day, and yes, I did emphasize this in any video where I talked about this, do not matter. They matter a little bit to some people, but they would matter much more to me if Sony didn't deliver a solid launch lineup. It would matter much more to me if Sony's games just didn't look visually stunning, if games were struggling to hit higher resolutions at higher frame rates, if the PS5 just couldn't do any form of ray tracing whatsoever, if Sony didn't innovate on the DualSense, if Sony didn't pretty much do what they said that they were going to do. See, that's the difference here, people, is even though I fell for Microsoft's marketing, and even though I partook in this conversation, I never needed Sony to have some type of secret sauce. I never needed them to have Infinity Cache. I never needed them to have the most teraflops. It was all stuff that I would have liked them to have, because it's nice to have a leg up on the competition, which is why I understand Xbox fans are running with this as much as they are. And it's also why I'm not going to say that, hey, you should stop that. No, if that's what you want to do, go right ahead. If having that 12 T-flop power advantage matters to you, then by all means, celebrate it. If being the only console with a full RDNA 2 feature set is what matters most to you, then by all means, run with it and celebrate it. Okay? You have Game Pass, you have some other things. You have a new headset that's coming out, which is nice. You know, that you have Bethesda, which we still don't know what's going on with that when it comes to their future games. These are all things that by all means be excited about, but do not try to make it sound like PlayStation owners are really losing out on something right now, because objectively speaking, we're not. I'm not trying to take anything away. I'm just trying to also prevent others from taking stuff away from the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 owners, where it's like, we need to acknowledge the hard facts here, okay? My biggest gripe, and this is where I'm going to end the video. We're definitely going to talk more about this during Press X podcast tomorrow. My biggest gripe with Xbox, ever since I left Xbox and really just kind of left them behind, was always centered around one thing and one thing only. It was not the power. It was not, you know, anything that we're really talking about right now, other than it was about the games. That's what it was about. I wanted more games that were higher quality. And we're still waiting for that, in my opinion. And that is something that not only Sony has delivered throughout the PS4 generation, but right off the bat, they're continuing to deliver with the PS5 generation with a healthy next-gen leap thrown in the mix. And that's what matters at the end of the day more than anything to me personally. Anyway, that's going to do it for the video, guys. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Leave the video a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.